Welcome to A Shot in the Arm podcast. I'm your host, Ben Plumley, and this is a podcast about innovation and equity in global health. We're brought to you in partnership with the Bay Area Global Health Alliance, a network of academics, tech, biotech, and other private companies, NGOs and community organizations, all based in the Bay Area and all committed to improving the health of people around the world. It's World AIDS Day, a moment for us to reflect on the nearly 38 million people around the world living with HIV, the 680,000 people who died as a result of HIV this year, and the 1,500,000 new infections we saw. The theme is Ending Inequalities, End AIDS. So it's really fitting that our guest today is a voice of who has inspired the first generations of people living in a world of AIDS. And then as COVID hit in the world 2 years ago, she has made incredible use of social media, particularly Twitter, to promote mask wearing and defend the rights of trans communities. Whether you are from Britain, Europe, South Africa, Australia, or the US, she is a national treasure, and she is one of the most beautiful voices we all know. Please join me in welcoming Hazell Dean. Welcome to A Shot in the Arm, Hazell.
Well, thank you for that. That was lovely. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, yes.
Whatever time day it is.
Yeah, where are we? You announced earlier this year you were retiring from the music industry, or at least from performing at Pride concerts. And then you went into the studio, recorded 2 brilliant collections of songs, and released them digitally with Pete Ware, your longtime production partner and former Divine musical director. So I got to ask, how is that? How is retirement working out for you?
Well, to be honest with you, I was thinking about retiring back in 2019. I mean, it had been on my mind because this year I've been in the music industry for 51 years this year. It was 50 years last year. So, I had been considering it anyway. So going down into lockdown sort of, I guess, sort of cinched the deal for me, really. Because I realised that, I would be perfectly fine. And there are so many reasons why I wanted to retire from live shows. Just general stress, really, and the driving and the traffic, all sorts of reasons. And but I didn't want to retire from everything. So I was in the studio this weekend just gone actually. So I decided to carry on with recording. Those 2 albums, by the way, are albums that I recorded about 3 or 4 years ago. And I've just got all the rights back to them. So out of interest, you've never heard of those albums before?
No, I hadn't.
They're new to you. Well, that's interesting. So.
Yeah, and they came to me via Spotify. And yeah. I should say there are a number of your very early albums that, being here in the US, I can't access, which presumably is a licensing issue. But that's for another time. So can I take you back those 51 years? When did you know you wanted to become a singer?
Oh, at a very early age. I would say when I was about 7 or 8, really. I just loved pop music from a very, very early age. I wanted to be in the Beatles. I loved Cilla Black. I loved all those great singers and songwriters for that period in time. I just always felt something inside. And then when I went to senior school, that's where I started to learn to play the guitar. I guess I was about, how old would I have been? 12, 13, something around that age. Once I started to do that was it, really. I knew that's sort of what I wanted to do. How I would do it, I didn't know. But I learned to play the guitar. I had a natural sense of rhythm. And I joined we had a band at the school, and I joined the band, and we did little gigs. I come from Essex, the county of Essex. I used to do lots of sort of little singing bands all around Essex whilst I was a teenager as a semi-professional. I did go to a school of singing, So, I learned how to use my voice properly, breathing, everything. And then when I was 7, the School of Singing that I went to, the Maurice Burnham School of Singing, they sort of guaranteed to help you get your first professional job. So, which I'd be interesting to see if that sort of thing goes on now. Everything's so different now. But and I got a job with a band singing up in Stoke-on-Trent, and that's how I started my professional career as a singer.
Wow.
So that would have been 1970.
So you would have spent, say, 7 or 8 years really working it to get your break. Than that.
Yeah, I worked all through the 70s in lots of big bands. I mean, I don't know if you may have heard of any of like the Ray McVeigh Band, Andy Ross Band, Johnny Howard, big bands in that time. And of course, back in those days, we had all these fabulous places where you could sing in big live bands, all the Mecca dance halls that used to be up and down the country. So, that's where I learned my craft, really. And I loved every minute of it. And I've done session work. I've done an awful lot of stuff. And then that was all through the 70s. And then we're going into the 80s now. I was a singer in bands professionally, I'd say 12 or 13 years before Searching was a hit.
Wow. And then you discovered Hi-NRG. And that's sort, and here's the fanboy. Here's the fanboy coming out. It feels like the style of music where you really found your voice. So one that connects you to the growing electro pop mainstream of the early 80s, but also the gay community who absolutely loved Hi-NRG. And, most of A Shot in the Arm's viewers and listeners know exactly what we mean when we talk about dancing out to Hi-NRG. But how would you describe that music? Why did it appeal to you?
This is why I say it found me, because up until that point, I mean, I in the sort of late 70s, I mean, I did have my own band at one point, but I wanted to sing big ballads and things, really. And I used to sing a lot of sort of soul, sort of 80s soul stuff. I used to love all that kind of stuff. But the track that really turned me on to the Hi-NRG stuff was Gloria Gaynor, Never Can Say Goodbye. And I used to sing that in one of the bands that I was in. I used to think that was such a fantastic track, all the strings, and I loved it. And that was the sort of first song of like the Hi-NRG sort of genre that I that I loved. And I did back in the 70s and sort of mid 70s, about 75, 70, that would have been 77, I would say. I recorded some tracks back then, which, unbeknown to me, were really big on the Northern Soul scene in this country. And that's what I'm saying. It found me in many ways, because they were, I did a cover version of Our Day Will Come. I don't know if you know that song.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. And also I was working with a guy called Paul Curtis and Pip Williams, who Pip Williams went on to be a huge, he does arrangements and things, and productions. And an original song, Paul was the songwriter, called Got You Where I Want You, Babe. And so it was through those songs that Ian Anthony Stevens, who wrote and produced Searching, heard my voice on the Northern Soul scene. So we're in the early 80s now, and I was doing, as I just said, singing in bands, sessions. I was also, by this time, I was writing. I'd got piano in my little flat. But he kind of tracked me down because he tried Searching with a couple of other people.
Yeah.
And because this is how it was, and he tracked me down basically, and I just heard this song, Searching.
So it's a question I ask a lot of my guests, and as you know, Hazell, a lot of the people who come on A Shot in the Arm podcast are doctors or nurses or community people, but they all begin their career. It really starts to take off just as the AIDS epidemic hits. And I asked them, how did that affect you? And it seems an absolutely relevant question for you. You're finding your groove, as it were, and then here you are in an era of this new epidemic. So yeah, how does it affect you?
Well, obviously, at the time, I was sort of riding high with searching because it was a gay anthem before I walked on. I mean, the first thing I did was Heaven. The first gay club I walked into was Heaven, and I'd been singing in a little band before that. Before I walked on stage at Heaven, I'd been singing somewhere else in a band, which was really weird because it was so. There I was in my frock, singing in a band, and the next thing I'm singing in Heaven, and everyone's going crazy. And Search was number one, and well, it was fantastic. But it, I went through 1983 doing every gay club. I came to the States, and then I'm trying to think. That in 1983, I mean, like everybody, I wasn't aware at that point in time what was going on. I know it was starting to happen, and but it was 1984 really, because I think I'd already had the hit with Searching, and the thing that I remember more than anything else was I used to do a club in Brighton called the Pink Flamingo.
Oh yes.
Do you remember
yes.
that? And I'd done it a few times. And one of my first PAs for Searching was in that very club. And I remember this particular night, I used to walk down the staircase. You used to walk down to the club, and you could hear it all thumping. I think, oh, this is going to be good. And you'd walk down, and normally it's packed. And because I'd arrive about an hour before I was due to go on stage. But this particular night, I walked down, I could hear everything going, the thumping music. But I walked down, and the whole place was practically empty. And like it was a real big shock. And I think that was my first experience of what was happening with the whole AIDS situation. Because at first I thought is it me? And that's where it all sort of began for me, really.
Yeah, I mean, I started coming out in the mid '80s, and I certainly saw you at the Black Cap, and for those of us who braved going south of the river at the Two Brewers.
Two Brewers, yeah.
But there you are doing this, and you're also becoming like the foundation of the Stock Aitken and Waterman hit factory production house. And these seem to me two and of course they had hits every 5 minutes. So that seems a very strange place to be, doing the clubs, but also part of this hit factory. What was that like?
I didn't really sort of think much about it. For me, the two things, it just kind of went hand in hand, really. I wasn't, here I am doing all these fabulous clubs, the gay clubs, and I just loved it because they took me to their hearts. And I guess also once I'd sort of done that show, and I found out more about what was going on with AIDS, and that I wasn't gonna sort of catch it by just looking at someone or being in a club. It's the sort of educating yourself, isn't it, about the whole thing? And I just wasn't going to stay. I wasn't going to just suddenly stop doing the clubs, because I was kind of, in a way, I'd fallen in love with the whole thing. But I didn't really think about the whole thing with PWR because it was all part of it. It just, in many ways, it all sort of went hand in hand, really. And so I carried on, and I did. There was the Terence Higgins Trust. I did a lot of if you educate yourself about something and you're careful, then you do it.
And you educated yourself.
I wasn't going to desert the whole, because it was all part of what was going on.
There has always seemed, and it's true now as you communicate on Twitter and Facebook. There is a damn it, I'm going to do it my way approach to things, and I wonder how you educated yourself during these times. You mentioned the Terence Higgins Trust, which is where I first went, which is where I
Yeah.
got my information, my support, and made sense to me. And the Terence Higgins Trust has been a very public supporter of what you've done, you and Kelly Marie. Very few people actually engaging with the gay community then. Were you aware of what you were doing, that this was such a statement of support?
Not at the time. No, I didn't. It's more probably more now than back then that I realise. When the series came out, It's a Sin. I realised then that, well, and I see things when I watched something very recently. I watched a film. I know what it was. It was Jamie. There's a film called the show.
Yes.
Called Jamie. Something about Jamie. And there's a whole section in there, and that we watched. Real footage of the time. I'm thinking, oh my God, I was there, and I think it's really hit home more now than maybe it did then, because I was just part of it. I was just part of it, really.
You sang live, and you sang live in crowded, smoky venues. You've spoken about how you trained your voice. How did you take care of it?
Well, I learned to breathe properly. That was the biggest thing, really, is learning to do your diaphragmatic breathing. It's most important. Yes, I did sing in a lot of smoky rooms, and there'd be people with cigarettes down the front, and that if it really annoyed me, I'd say something. I mean, I'm not scared to say, excuse me, can you move with your cigarette or whatever. That was annoying. I don't know. Again, I just could. I have to say, in later life, and again, it's another reason why I have retired, is that I think after all these years, my voice has suffered a little bit. Everybody's voice changes as you get older. I mean, if you like, with the ABBA stuff, they've all dropped their keys. Even Mr. Elton John has done that, and so have I. I've dropped a couple of keys, but your voice changes, and everybody's different. I mean, I've still got a high. I can still. Well, maybe not so much now, but I could still reach all the high notes, get my low notes. But my middle range was always affected.
Yeah.
And I had to take that into consideration when I was retiring as well, because that used to stress me out quite a lot. Worrying about that situation.
It struck me on these two new albums, the Dean and Ware collection.
Yeah.
And I'm behind the able because they've been out for a little while. But it strikes me that your voice, and again, apologies if I sound fanboyish, but it actually sounds to me like your voice has got richer and deeper. And in one of the communications you and I had in trying to set this conversation up, I mentioned to you how I thought you were beginning to sound like Dusty Springfield. And I know that's a very gay thing to say. But and I know so many eyes are going to be rolling because I said that. Yeah.
No, I wanted to be a Dusty Springfield. So I wanted to be one of those girls, because I grew up in that time in the 60s. I loved all that. And yes, well, of course, I'd covered some of my favourite songs. 24 Hours from Tulsa, Close My Eyes and Count to 10. I mean, because I was co-producing it, I could sing whatever I wanted. So I chose those songs because I'd always wanted to cover them. I also covered songs from the early 80s, like Close to Perfection, Michael Brown, I Believe in Dreams, Jackie Roll. They were great songs. I've always wanted to cover them, and this was a chance for me to do it. And so I did it, and I loved every minute of it. I recorded those albums back in sort of 2011, 2012, around that period of time. And yeah, my voice was it was good.
Yeah, I got to say, I think it's masterful. If that's the right thing to be said.
But those albums, I have to say, Peter Ware and I mean, it was a labour of love, and we both thoroughly enjoyed recording those songs. So
now, had to be done.
Yeah.
During the millennium, your life changes a bit. You're balancing performance with motherhood. again, you're a very private person, but your daughter, I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, Stevie, has played an increasingly public part of your life. I mean,
Yeah.
just this weekend, you and she donated her hair to the Little Princess Trust, which provides wigs and grants for kids affected by cancer. Clearly, motherhood has dramatically changed you. Could you talk a bit about that?
Well, it just changes your whole life. Things are never the same again, to be honest, because there's this little person in your life, and they are number one, and you've got to be there. So you've got to juggle the whole thing. But I mean, she's 17 at Christmas, and it's been one heck of a ride, really. I mean, that was her choice to do that with the hair. It was her choice. We've always tried to be, we talk to Stevie about stuff. We're as honest as she's been growing up, and she asks about things. We would talk to her, as whatever age she was, we'd talk to her in a way that she would understand, and so she, we would reason with her. And I'm trying to think. With the hair, she met another little girl. Funny enough, I think it was at one of the Let's Rocks festivals that we did, and I think there was someone else had done this, and she thought that was such a fantastic thing to do, and she decided to do it herself. So, she didn't need any sort of pushing from us. She just got on and did it and grew it. And yesterday, her dad cut her hair, and she's raised some money. She's been sponsored as well, and that was all her own doing. So, but yeah, it's hard work. It's tiring, but it's so rewarding because she's a lovely girl.
Well, I've not had children. We've got dogs, and I see you've got
we
dogs
have dogs
too.
as well.
Yeah,
and fish, and probably some other things along the line.
So, can I bring us to today, to 2021, and sort of social justice? Our partner in putting this podcast together is the Bay Area Global Health Alliance, and it's companies, it's individuals working in the social tech sectors. While your big hits have always been on my playlist, lockdown has reintroduced me to you in two ways. First of all, as we've spoken about, I can get nearly all of your albums on Spotify. But secondly, and much more importantly, you emerged on my Twitter feed and have become one of Britain's most vocal advocates on two things: on COVID protection for crews working with artists, but also around trans rights. And I'd love to talk to you about both of those things. But how have you come to see that technology can be used so effectively?
Our social media is a team effort, really. My daughter and my partner keep me up to date, with what's going on. We discuss everything and decide how I can raise issues and show my support on my social media. I'm not an activist. I just try to be a decent person and just do the right thing because, I care, because I think that the trans community are being persecuted right now. And I don't really know why. I just think the whole COVID thing has it brings out the great in people. It brings out all the good things in people, but it also it seems to bring out bad things in people as well. And it's they're just being persecuted, and it's not right. So of course, I'll stand by them, as they have stood firmly with the gay community for so many years, and I just think it's such a shame because I think everybody deserves to have the right, as long as they're nice, as long as they're good people and kind people. Everyone has the right to be who they want to be, and it's just as simple as that, really.
Yeah, nobody's free until everybody is free.
Oh, exactly, it's crazy.
Yeah. But, many people might have been frightened off social media. You've embraced it.
I don't always understand it, but...
Yeah, right. Understanding it's a completely different thing.
I have a lot of help.
But, you refuse to back down. You say, I refuse to be frightened. And I think there's something very interesting in that, so for young gay men back in the mid to late 80s, refusing to be frightened and having that inspiration from the sort of the beat of your music that sort of pulsed through us.
Yeah.
That was very important.
Yeah. But I just have nothing to be frightened of. Everybody has a right to be who they want to be, and I have a platform, and I can, I'll speak up. I'll do just as what I can, really. I did my prides for 38, 39 years, and over the last 10 years, as you probably know, we've used "Turn It Into Love" as a special saying, and it's just become important. It's nothing really. It's just someone saying, "Who cares about people?" And I can say it in a song, and I do. And I just do the best I can in my own little way.
Well, I would say perhaps it's not so little, but
maybe.
Yeah. I always ask my guests what's keeping them sane 2 years into COVID, and I'm actually putting together a Spotify list of my favorite Hazell Dean songs, which will be attached to the show list, show notes for this special World AIDS Day epidemic. But what would be on Hazell Dean's playlist? What are you listening to at the moment?
Well, we listen to the radio, and because you asked me, one of the questions was Hazell's Spotify pandemic playlist, and I don't use Spotify, so our family pandemic playlist has always been provided entirely by the BBC Radio 2.
That is a lovely shout out to the BBC.
I know. Well, it's true. I love. Yeah, I've got all my favourite programmes, and but obviously, I'm a CD girl. When I'm driving in my car, I have my CDs, and I'm sort of Barbra Streisand or old school. Diana Ross, just got the new Diana Ross album. It's all the greats, really. But I like a lot. I think there's some fantastic singer-songwriters out there right now, like your Ed Sheerans. There's some great voices. So there is some great music around at the moment.
So, look, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Is there anything we've missed that you think we ought to cover? Anything that you think it's really important we know?
Not really. I think we've covered most things. I did write a few things down, but no, I think I've said everything really. I think I've said it. I did write down this because I did write down, I don't care about anyone's colour, gender, sexuality or physical ability. All I care about is that you are a kind and decent human being or not. The rest is irrelevant. We are all equal.
Well, I think that is a lovely way to wrap up this episode. Thank you, Hazell. You are a shot in the arm.
Oh, bless you. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks to Hazell Dean. Thanks to Becky in Dino Management for helping us brush out the cobwebs of our memories in getting this episode together. Thanks to Sarah Anderson from the Bay Area Global Health Alliance. And thanks to Eric Aspera, our director and producer. Thanks also to Troy Aspera, our digital producer. And finally, thanks to you. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe on whatever podcast or video platform you are enjoying this content on. And all the more this World AIDS Day. Have a great week and a safe week, everyone.